Okay, Year 9, and welcome back to your next living room lesson. Last lesson we started our look at the leisure topic, and we're going to be continuing that today. And to do so, you are going to need your book, pen and ruler, and your phone, and that is it for today. Okay. As per normal, let's do a little jog your memory. So name a rural and an urban leisure activity. How many shops are currently vacant in the UK? And name 2 comparison goods. Okay. So scan the QR code. Go to the Jog Your Memory online. Please have a go at this. It's really useful for us to see how you're doing and how many of you are watching these videos. So pause your videos now, scan the code and go have a look. Okay, so what we are going to be doing today is we're continuing this kind of introduction to leisure, but we're going to be having a look at the distribution of leisure. So last lesson we were looking at kind of how people can access it, where it is, rural, urban areas, blah, blah, blah. And what we're going to have a think about today is where we find leisure sites. So the title in your books today is Distribution of Leisure and a Local Leisure Example, because at the end we are also going to have a look at a local leisure site as a bit of a named example. So title today, Distribution of Leisure and a Local Leisure Example. So as I mentioned, we're starting off by having a think about distribution. Now distribution again is a word we use a lot in geography. It is very, very common in a GCSE paper to be given a map with a load of points on it and it's say describe the distribution of the points. Now, often a lot of people will look at that and they'll say, oh, they're quite evenly spread out, or oh yeah, the distribution is fairly uneven. But there are 4 much better words we can use to be describing distributions. So what we're going to do is we're going to learn what these 4 words are, then we're going to put it to practice. So the first thing I'd like to do is copy this diagram out with our 4 different types of distribution. And then I would like you to, from these 4 red words, so linear, random, clustered and regular, I want you to decide which of these each of them is. So is this linear, is this clustered, and then write it above each of the boxes so you know what type of distribution these are, okay? So pause your videos and have a go at that now. Okay, I'll go through these quickly. So this first one here is what we would call our regular distribution, because all of our points are very regularly spread out. There's a regular interval between them, there's not huge gaps, it's all very, very kind of even. And this one is obviously what we would call our linear distribution because our points are in a line. This would be our random distribution because there's no real pattern. They're quite spread out, they're all over the place, you couldn't pick out a pattern. And then this is what we would call a clustered distribution. So this is when our points are really, really close together. So we're going to have a go at describing distributions now using this. So here is our first map. So this is obviously a map of Brighton. And what it shows us, each of these red points are the different leisure centres within Brighton. So what I'd like you to do first of all is pause your videos, have a look at this map, and I want you to write me 3-4 bullet points describing the distribution of leisure centres. Obviously, you're going to use those words that you just learned, but I also want you to think north, east, south, west. Is there a pattern in terms of where they are within the urban area? So the kind of yellowy colour is our urban area. So is there a pattern with where they're found in the north or the east or the south or the southwest or the northwest of this? Okay, so pause your videos and have a go at this first. So 3 points you could have said on this. They are fairly regularly spaced across the urban area. Oh, yeah, they are. They're regular, okay? That's quite a regular pattern there. And there are 4 which run east to west in a linear pattern. So linear, east to west along the southern edge. Oh, wrong way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Quite linear, that's quite a straight line, and it goes from east to west. And there are none in the middle section of the urban area. So in this kind of middle section here, there are no leisure sites, leisure centres, okay? So those are 3 points you could have picked out from this. Now I want you to have another go, and this time we're having a look at large parks. So these are all of the large parks in Brighton, and these are marked with our trees. So this one's not quite as obvious, but I want you to have a look at this map now, and again, give me 3 bullet points describing the distribution of these large parks. Okay, so we could say most of the large parks are clustered in the central part of the urban area, because we can see here they're quite clustered in this central bit here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all in that very central part. There is one which is a bit of an anomaly, Stamner Park, on the northeastern edge of the city. So this one is completely separate to these clusters here. So this would be a complete anomaly here. There is another one, another anomaly, the Southwick Green, on the eastern edge of the city. So all the way over here, again, very separate to all the others. So this one is quite not part of the regular pattern. And there are none towards the northern edge of the urban area. So in this whole northern area, there are none. So these are our main patterns. That one was a bit harder, but hopefully you picked out some of those patterns there for us, okay? So what I want us to have a think about now is why some people might have better access to leisure. So looking at that, we saw that, for example, all of the parks were clustered quite near the centre of the city. So obviously people who live near the centre of the city are going to have better access to those parks. So this says leisure facilities are not always evenly distributed throughout a whole city. E.g. a centre of a town is going to have much more restaurants than on the edge of the town. So living near to the centre of a city, you're going to have more access to cafes and restaurants and bars and pubs than someone who might live right on the northern edge. So I live really quite central. I live 10 minutes walk from the train station. So I am going to have much better access to cafes and restaurants than someone who lives up in the north of Brighton. So someone who lives near Holland-Briasda, for example, they're not going to be able to walk to a load of cafes in the same way that I can. So people who live in the centre of cities are going to have much better access than people who live on the edge. And then people on the edge are going to have better access than people like you poor sods who live out in the countryside, okay? So what I would like you to do is, first of all, I want you to write 3 factors that would affect people's access to leisure. So I've just given you one, that distance. So the distance you have to travel is a factor that affects people's access. So if you are closer, you're going to have better access. So what other 2 things might have an impact on how people are able to access leisure? And then what groups of people are going to have more or less access to leisure? So maybe do a little table. You could do a little T-bar table with more access and less access. And maybe come up with 3 bullet points for each. So 3 groups of people that are going to have more access, and then 3 groups of people who are going to have less, okay? Oh, I've just put down my clicker. I can't pause, there we go. Okay, so in terms of factors that affect people's access, I've already given you one, that distance is a key factor. It could also be access to public transport. So if you live near to a bus stop, you're going to have better access than someone who lives 15-minute walk from a bus stop. It could be whether you've got a car, that would be a factor. Income would be another key factor. If you are going to rely on buses and cars and your income is less, you have not got as good access to as someone who can walk 5 minutes to a leisure site. So finance is another key thing. In terms of groups of people that might have more or less, we did touch on this last lesson, but I will give you a few if you can read my terrible handwriting. So people who live centrally, people who have a higher income, and people with cars. In terms of people who might have less access, people who live less centrally, or we might have people with a lower income. And then let's add a slightly different one in. We also would have disabled people are going to have less access because they're only going to be able to access leisure sites that are disability friendly, that have ramps, that have disabled toilets, places where they can get to on a bus which has disabled access. So disabled people are going to have considerably less access. In the same vein, people, young mums with pushchairs, they're not going to go to places with loads of steps. So they're going to have less access. So second part of this lesson is having a little look at an example of a local leisure site. So here is some photos of a leisure site that I absolutely love. I go here all the time, all right? So first of all, I want to see if any of you know where this is, okay? Here's quite a big clue. There's a big event held there every year. You're all hopefully shouting at the videos now. Yes, Mr. Smith, I know what the answer is. Did you get it? So this is Preston Park, which is a large park in fairly central Brighton. It is also what I call my back garden because I live in a flat which doesn't have a garden. This is where I go for my daily walk every day. So this is one of my favourite places in Brighton, and you're going to see how enthusiastic I am about it in a moment, okay? So as you can see, Preston Park is just kind of north of the central urban area. So it doesn't take long to get from Preston Park to, say, the train station. It's less than 15-minute walk from the station to Preston Park. So it's a fairly central part of Brighton, but also it's really accessible from the north of Brighton. So if you're coming in on that main road that lots of you will come in on, it's a really easy part of Brighton to access. So lots of people are able to enjoy Preston Park partly because of its location, but also because most of its facilities are free. So it's got a wide range of facilities, you can find out in a minute about them, but the majority of them are free. You have to pay to use the tennis court in the summer months, but it is free during winter and autumn. And there are cafes where obviously you have to pay for the food, you don't get free hot chocolate. Most of the stuff is free, so people on a lower income, so this group here, are able to access Preston Park really easily. Because it's in an urban area, that is a huge amount of people that are able to go there. I'll tell you now, during my lockdown walks, there has been more people there than I have ever seen before. Lockdown is working really, really well. And it's easy to get there by public transport. There's buses that go all the way along Preston Park, so you can literally stop right there. It's really near to Preston Park train station, so you can get the train there. It's also near to London Road train station and the main station, to be honest, so it's really accessible by public transport. So what I like to do in your books is do a little heading of Preston Park. Please write that out and underline it. And then I want you just to write these red bits here about what makes Preston Park accessible. So just write down these as 3 quick bullet points. What makes it accessible? The little red bits. Okay, so what we're going to do now, and this is really weird, this is like video inception here. You now are going to watch a video of me giving a tour around Preston Park. So this video I filmed a couple of years ago because we used to watch this really naff video that the Brighton Council made. And my year 11s from a couple of years ago were all like, oh, Mr. Smith, you're so excited about Preston Park, why don't you go film your own video? So I did, and you might say this is where the kind of start of my video teaching career came from. So what I would like you to do is pause your videos, and I want you to scan the QR code, go and watch this video. As I said, it's video inception, it's video of me within a video of me. And I would like you, whilst watching it, to do a little mind map that says facilities and activities in Preston Park. And as you're watching it and seeing how enthusiastic I am, I want you to put as many of the different facilities and things you can do in Preston Park on your mind maps, okay? So watch the video and complete this mind map for me. I really hope you enjoyed that. I know it's terribly cringe, but I was made to do it. My old year 11s made me do it. So hopefully you got that there's a huge range of facilities. You've got cafes, you've got toilets, you've got tennis courts, basketball courts, table tennis tables, you've got the allotments, you've got the pond, you've got the rose garden, you've got the rock gardens. As you can see, I know it very, very well. Lots of different facilities you can do at Preston Park. So second to last thing I want you to do today is 2 more quick mind maps. One of them are what would be advantages of Preston Park for the local residents and leisure users, and what would be the disadvantages, okay? So advantages, we've already got one there, close to a train station. Disadvantages, there is limited parking. You can park there, but there's not a huge amount. So based on what you saw in that video, and any other knowledge you might have of it, I want you to copy out these 2 little mind maps and come up with maybe 3 more things on each one. Off you go. Okay, so in terms of advantages, we've obviously already got close to a train station. You could also put something we already put down earlier, that there's most of the activities are free, so you don't need a high income. You could also put that you can get there by other public transport like buses. You could put that there are toilets for young families. You could put that there are disabled parking bays. So there's a load of things that make it good. But in terms of the disadvantages, now I don't like to talk ill of Preston Park because it is my favourite place. But we have, obviously, there isn't a huge amount of parking, okay? There are quite a lot of steps and ramps and stuff, so if you're in a wheelchair, there are bits of it that are quite accessible, but it's not completely accessible. If you live near it, so if you're a local resident, so I live very near it, and whenever there is a large event on, so things like Pride or things like the large firework display, yes, I am normally at them, but I can imagine that the elderly lady who lives above me, who is trying to sleep, doesn't get on with the fact there is a huge amount of noise coming from them. So there is a lot of noise pollution during certain peak events, okay? So there are obviously a few negatives of it, but not really. It is a great place. So last thing you're going to do today is, again, you know what we're like. Here's Miss Corcoran, here's me, Miss Charles, Miss Middleditch. We all miss you lots. I talk to them every week and we all miss you lots. But we like to keep an eye on you and keep track on where you are all at. So what you are going to be doing today for the last 5 minutes of the lesson is you are all going to be completing a quiz on Teams. So your teacher will have set it under the Teams assignment section. I know, before you all email me saying, I don't know how to get on that, I know you've all been using Teams assignments in music. So I know you've been using them. So please just do the same as you would do in music. Click on Teams, click on assignments, and then it will be there, okay? The quiz will be there ready for you to do. It's just a short amount of questions, but it's just to see how well you're all doing. So I need you to all go and do that today, okay? Your teachers will be chasing you. You don't want these smiley, happy faces looking sad and angry, do you? Okay. So what you should have in your book, the 4 types of leisure distribution, description of leisure centres, description of park, so the distribution descriptions, the factors affecting access to leisure, the 3 bullet points on what makes Preston Park accessible, a list or a mind map of facilities at Preston Park, the 2 different mind maps of the advantages and disadvantages, and you will have all completed your quizzes, okay? Well done, Year 9. Hopefully I will be seeing you all very soon. Any questions, let your teachers know.